Well, for more on how the home improvement sector has benefited from the pandemic, I spoke earlier with Nicholas Shields, a consumer sector analyst at Third Bridge Forum. And I asked him how lockdowns have affected the way we view and use our living, work and school spaces.
I think with more people staying at home, whether that be students who are home from school or, parents who are working from home, in a greater emphasis is placed on sort of the home decor and the home living. Whether this be, as John mentioned, with Home Depot or Lowe's, being the beneficiaries, or even online retailers who sell home furnishing goods, names like Wayfair or even Amazon and Target, they've done quite well. So it's just a matter of consumers being in their homes more, and then as a result, wanting to invest more money in their homes to sort of improve their quality of life.
And so to improve that from the inside to the outside of the home, even in garden spaces, what kinds of updates are people doing?
So for now, they're mostly outside type projects. So think about like a new deck, a new grill, a new patio, things like that. And that's largely just due to the fact that we're in the middle of the summer right now. And, once COVID hit back in March, that for Home Depot and Lowe's in particular, that's really the start of their summer season, because consumers are, going out and buying things that prepare them and their homes for the summer. So what really you saw happening was consumers were, essentially doing that in, much larger numbers than they do normally in March, April, and May, and that's reflective in these companies' Q2 earnings. As you mentioned, Home Depot sales up 23%, Lowe's up 30% in Q2.
And let's look at the reasons. I mean, how much of these changes are driven by necessity and functionality versus, aesthetics, trying to look good for these Zoom interviews that now a lot of people are doing?
I think it's both. At a certain level, it's more of the inside projects are, to your point, for people to look good on Zoom calls and Zoom meetings, if you will. The outside projects are, from what we're hearing, a lot of stuff that was deferred years and years by consumers. But given that people were at home, they had more time to do these projects themselves. They went out and bought the materials to redo their deck, revamp their patio, buy the new grill, refertilize their lawn, things like that. So it's really a mix of both, but divided by whether or not a project's an indoor project or an outdoor project.
And obviously people have been using a lot of these stimulus checks to invest in these things. So are people doing these updates themselves, or are they shelling out the money for experts like contractors and interior designers as well?
So it's definitely both, although, since the pandemic hit, the sort of DIY, do-it-yourself channel has been a bit healthier for Home Depot and Lowe's, which is sort of indicative of, consumers doing this themselves. Partly that's due to, the time constraints no longer being there, with consumers not having to go and commute to an office and, being at home, working from home. They simply have more time to, be around and, conduct themselves and, do those sorts of projects. But we are seeing some sort of steadily improving demand on the, professional segment for Home Depot and Lowe's. And it's important to remember when thinking about those two companies, Home Depot is a little bit more skewed towards the, the contractor or the professional customer, which is who is ultimately going out and doing, those improvements for consumers, whereas Lowe's is a little bit more skewed towards your DIY buyer who, is doing all of this stuff themselves.
Now, as we know, COVID has really forced us to take a look at our living spaces under lockdown and really think about some of these must-have designs and features to make life more comfortable and enjoyable. What do you think are going to be the new must-have COVID-influenced home trends?
That's a good question. Certainly see a lot more emphasis on outdoor activities. Now, part of that is, being the middle of the summer, as we discussed previously. So you are seeing a lot of big ticket items purchased for outdoor home activities. So things like grills, smokers, patio tables, things like that. So at least for now, that's what you're seeing being the sort of need to have home, decor and home furnishing. Now, the big question is, as we head into the fall and the winter, and we still see people working from home, the question then becomes, does that narrative change with, people not being able to go outside quite as often? So I think that's a key question to watch as we head into, especially the holiday season, because it's not quite as important for Lowe's and Home Depot as it is for the big box retailers or apparel retailers, but it's still quite important.